People ask me, when did I start learning how to cook? Spaghetti bolognese was the first thing that I learned how to cook by myself. When I was 9, I was 9 years old. I was cooking for my mom and I dinner. It was just my mom and I. I would come home from school, open the flat, let myself in, and start cooking dinner and have dinner ready and prepared for my mom and I at the age of 9. So you can say that spaghetti bolognese really does have a very special place in my heart, and it has always been one of my favorite meals of all time, which is quite something for me to say because people ask me all the time, what is your favorite cuisine? What is your favorite meal? What is your favorite food? And I can never normally give an answer because for me, it's always dependent on the time of day, the time of year, what the weather's doing outside, my emotions, so many variables. But spaghetti bolognese is just, it's one of those comforting dishes, and I'm very happy to share this with you guys. I think it is pretty delicious. It is very much, I think it would be something to contend very strongly alongside its non-plant-based counterpart. This one's better. It doesn't hurt any cows. It's great. It is something to be done when you have some time because it's one of those things that requires slow cooking. Most of the time we know that things that are slow cooked taste better. You can feel the love that's gone into them. You can taste the heart, the soul. You can taste the time that it's taken for those ingredients to really just develop with time, because that's essentially what happens. So mise en place, as always, is very important. It really helps your process. And let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to soak my sun-dried tomatoes, which are actual dried tomatoes. They are not the ones that are soaking in oil. And the reason for this is because I really want to essentially rehydrate them in the water that I'm going to pour over them now, and then extract all of the flavor that has infused into that water and use it within my dish. So I've just got a kettle that's just been boiled, and I'm just going to cover these guys with the water. And for now, I'm going to set them aside. I don't need them right now. They can do their thing, rehydrate, come back to life, etc. Now, this beautiful thing over here is an amazing tool in a kitchen. A food processor, really, it will change your life when you get one. They are not an essential to every home because I know that for most people, it's not like something that everybody's going to go out and buy. But if you can, do so. It is a lifesaver. So I am going to essentially, instead of sit here chopping everything individually, I'm going to throw everything into my food processor, because for this dish, you kind of want the texture of the veg to remain uneven. You don't want exact textures like a knife would give you. You want it to be like a little bit crumbly, a little bit chunky, and that's what the food processor is going to do with the pulse setting. So I'm going to start by processing my walnuts. So essentially, you want the food processor to be dry for this, because you don't want the walnuts to be sticking to the sides, and then it's a bit of a mission to get out. So I'm just placing them in, and I'm going to essentially pulse grind them until they are a coarse meal, because again, we want the texture to be there. If you think of ground beef mince, it has a texture to it, and that's what we're trying to mimic here. So I'm just going to pulse until I have that sort of coarse meal. Let's have a look. Tiny bit more. Okay, we are there. So I'm going to get this out and just pop it back into this little bowl and then set it aside, because I'll only need it a little bit later. There's something about walnuts when you cook them in a sauce. They really have a very meaty flavor, which is quite incredible. Okay, that'll do. Most of them are out. So now, no need to clean the food processor because now we are going to throw in our veggies. So my collie has just been floreted roughly. I'm going to throw those guys in there along with my onions. I'm just going to chop them into little bits just to help the food processor out. Same with the carrot. And then we want to throw our garlic in there as well. And then the mushrooms that I will talk to you about. So I've got portobello mushrooms here, and they have been destemmed. So essentially all that means is I'm just going to slightly pull and twist out the little stem. All we want are the little hats. And a very important note, please do not wash mushrooms. Mushrooms are like a sponge, so as soon as they touch water, they immediately soak up that water, which is therefore going to dilute their flavor and affect their texture slightly. You don't want that like rubbery, mushroomy kind of not nice texture that a lot of people don't like. All you need to do is just take a damp cloth or even a dry cloth, or if you have a mushroom brush, just brush them or wipe them down to get the dirt off of them. So I'm going to pop those in as well. Okay, so they're all in. We're going to shred, pulse shred until chunky bits, but pretty fine, finely chopped. I'll show you when we get there. Okay, so there's still some chunky bits of carrot, so I'm going to go a little bit more. Right, that'll do. That is essentially the texture that we're wanting. It's chunky, but there's some fine bits in there, and there are actually some chunky bits of carrot, which is nice because it adds just for that really nice texture. Okay, so I have a nice heavy base bottom frying pan. Really important to get frying pans with nice heavy bases. Same goes for pots. I'm putting them on the big heat. I'm putting the fire up to high because I want to heat this guy up nice and quickly. These pots really do wonders. They heat up so nicely. Okay, so my pot is nice and hot. I can reduce that heat a little bit because that is quite a lot of heat. And I'm going to add in my olive oil. And then once my olive oil is hot, very important for your oil to be hot before your ingredients hit the oil. And the reason you want it to be hot is so that when your veggies hit the oil, you literally hear the sizzle. You always want to hear that because that is essentially creating flavor. We are caramelizing the veg, bringing out their natural sweet sugars, and caramelization is flavor. So now that we have some heat going in there, I'm just going to remove my blade for now and get these veggies in. Right, so we now want to essentially cook these down until they have reduced by about half. So what that means is that I'm going to be cooking all of the liquid, all of the natural water that is within the veg, I'm going to be cooking that out. And at the same time as that's happening is that the heat is touching all of the veggies and caramelizing them all. So we're adding flavor and we're reducing in size to essentially condense that flavor. So it takes a little bit of patience, takes a few minutes, but every now and then just give it a stir. Don't play with it too much, it's not necessary. As long as you're stirring every now and then, just to make sure that nothing is catching on the base of the frying pan and it's not burning, you're all good. but just make sure that you're reducing down and getting that caramelization. I'll show you what the veggies look like when they have browned on the edges and when the perfect caramelization is taking place. Okay, so I'm essentially scraping all of these glorious bits. Actually, I'm going to turn the light on because it's getting dark. I'm going to scrape all of these glorious caramelized bits from the bottom of the pan because that is your flavor, guys. You don't want to be losing that at all. They become really like sticky and yeah, just these delicious bits. Save them. That is where your flavor is hiding. You can see how much this is reduced already. Most of the water is cooked out. I'm just going to keep going for a little while longer just to create more caramelization, scrape more of these sticky caramelized bits off the bottom of the frying pan, and then move on to the next step. So we are definitely ready for the next step. You can see how much this has reduced in size. It's pretty much gone down to about half the volume of what it was. All of these amazing little sticky bits are still being scraped off the bottom of the pan. And you can see the caramelization that is running through this veggie mixture. So now I'm going to add in the next tablespoon of olive oil. And once it's hot, I'm now going to add in my spices. Essentially, you want to add your spices to that hot oil to like activate them, to essentially like bring them back to life because they are dried herbs, dried spice. So activating them in the oil is just going to really enliven the flavor and essentially get things really delicious. Okay, now that they are activated nicely, it's almost like tempering spices as you would do with, let's say, Indian cuisine when you temper the spices in the oil. Same story here. And now I'm just going to mix it through and make sure that it is a flavor that is evenly distributed throughout this mix. You can smell these just delicious aromas already. It's amazing how the heat just activates them like that. Okay, so that was about, yeah, I'd say you only need about 20 seconds of activating your herbs and spice like that. Now I'm going to add in the walnut meal. All I'm going to do is just stir this through. I'm going to turn the heat down to low right about now. Okay. That's good. I'm now going to turn the heat off because I'm now going to go back to my food processor and go back to those beautiful sun-dried tomatoes and take the next step. Okay. I'm going to place the beautiful tomatoes along with their soaking liquid into the food processor, along with 1 can of the tomatoes. Now, I don't ever advocate for canned food, but when it comes to a tomato, tomatoes are something that grow a certain time of the year abundantly. They just, in summertime, they flourish because of the sun and they're so juicy and ripe and sweet and delicious. And essentially, a canned tomato is housing all of that goodness inside. So it's like locking the summer in the can. And most of the time, I'll always go for an Italian tomato, but it's very difficult to find Italian canned tomatoes that are also organic, because organic, if you can, is something that you really want to try and do, because pesticides and herbicides are really terrible for you. And I mean, the list is endless. They are hormone disruptors. It's just not a good idea to put them in your body if you can help it. So organic where possible, please. And if you can find an organic canned tomato, you're very lucky, because that is what you want to do. Here in South Africa, it has been tricky to find Italian ones that are organic, so these will do for now. Okay, so essentially I'm just going to puree this mixture until it is nice and smooth and velvety. Perfect. So we now have a wonderful tomato puree, and I'm now going to move back to my stove with this as well as the second can of tomatoes. Okay, so we're back at the stove. I'm going to turn my pan onto medium-high again. And here I can add in my wonderful tomato puree. So we want to keep one of the cans as just the plain old crushed chunky tomato because again, we want that texture coming in. Right, that'll do. And now let's just give that a stir. It's already looking pretty much like ground beef, but the vegan version. Next can going in. And I wouldn't be true to my Italian heritage if I did not swirl the can of tomatoes out with some water. So, just a little Italian tradition. Give it a swirl, getting all that goodness. Okay, so we really want to bring this mixture to a simmer, which it is pretty much doing now. You can see the bubbles on the outside edge of the pan. It's almost actually a little bit too hot. Let me just take it down to a lower simmer because this is now going to simmer for about 20 minutes. Before I move away from it, I'm going to add in the remainder of my seasonings, which is wonderful organic brown miso paste. Get that in there. So the miso is really such a delicious umami flavor that really mimics the same flavor as beef. And organic tamari does pretty much the same thing. Just really want those rich, meaty umami flavors. Whenever I'm working with soy, I always make sure that it is an organic soy. And then just to balance things out, literally a tiny little drop of pure maple syrup, just to balance the tartness of the tomatoes. Doesn't make it sweet, it just really balances that flavor. So let me get this up to a simmer again. Right, that's looking almost a simmer. Okay, I'm going to now leave this to reduce and mellow and do its thing for about 15 to 20 minutes until the flavors have really just developed and become amazing. And while I'm waiting for that to happen, I'm going to prep my water so that I can begin cooking my pasta. I'll cook my pasta in the final 10 minutes of cooking time because you don't want your pasta to sit. You want it to be cooked al dente and ready to serve immediately so that it doesn't go stodgy or sticky or anything like that. So I'm going to go and boil my kettle. So now I've pretty much reduce that for about 10 minutes. So now we've got about another 10 minutes to go, which means I have just enough time to do my pasta. So I'm putting a nice big pot onto high heat. I've just boiled my kettle. And you really want to have a nice big pot so that your pasta can really have a lot of space to cook. Now, I'm going to pop a tiny touch of salt into my water, pop the lid back on, and essentially wait for it to be at a rapid boiling state. You really want to see really big, giant bubbles, and then add in your pasta. That is a rapid boil, the giant big bubbles. So it should be there pretty soon because that was a boiled kettle. But remember, water does come down in temperature quite dramatically once it's not in a kettle boiling anymore. Yay, so those are the giant bubbles that you want to see. And you're going to throw your pasta in. As soon as you've thrown your pasta in, you want to just stir it about so that all of the water touches each and every strand of pasta. So I'm using tagliatelle because that is my fave. I'm going to pop that lid on again because I want that to come back up to a rapid boil. You see how it stopped immediately because the pasta is not boiling itself. It's at a room temperature, so it brings the temperature of the water down. So popping the lid on, getting it back up to a rapid boil, and you're going to cook it according to your package instructions. I'm using a gluten-free spinach pasta made with whole grains. Gluten-free often takes quicker to cook. This one is about 8 minutes or so. Some gluten-free pastas are a lot longer as well. So just make sure you check the package instructions and cook according to those. So, yay. So that is where we want it. I'm going to go and set my timer now, and I will come back when we're ready to drain. Timer's just gone off, and you want to be really quick. So I'm going to essentially drain this, but I'm going to save some of the pasta liquid for my sauce. So I'm moving over to my little drain over here. In goes the pasta. Now, as I said, I want to save some of my cooking liquid. So I'm just going to do that. Allow it to drain. And while it's still nice and hot, drizzling it with some beautiful extra virgin olive oil. Don't do this if you don't have chef hands because you will burn yourself. Great. So back to our glorious sauce. The pasta water that I was saving is for the sauce. Just a little drizzle, just to stir that in there. That really helps to, just gives the sauce such a nice thickness and texture. And now, going in with my wonderful noodles, I'm now going to stir it through gently, because we don't want to break anything here. And allow these beautiful pasta strands to sit in the sauce for a little while, because as it sits, the pasta is actually going to start relaxing, and as it relaxes, it almost like gives off like an unctuous like juiciness to it, and it just makes the whole sauce and pasta mellow together and create a really beautiful texture, mouthfeel, and it adds to the flavor as well. So just pop the lid on, allow it to just stand there, even if it's just for a minute, just to like ease into the sauce and just get all delicious and wonderful. And then we will move over and we will plate up. So now that our pasta has become even more unctuous, I'm now going to plate up in a chefy kind of way. It's not going to be too fancy, but just something to make it pretty. Have got some beautiful basil from the garden, some oregano from the garden, very lucky to have that growing, and some marigold petals. So as always, I'm never going to be using the middle of the dish. I'll use the asymmetrical lines by working the one side of the plate or dish. And you can see here I haven't mixed in all of my pasta because I wanted to keep some of them without sauce, just so that I can use them to create some prettiness on my plate. Now, of course, you guys don't have to be all chefy like I'm being right now to create some food art for you. But sometimes it's fun to play with your food. For me, most of the time it's fun to play with my food. It's like creating a story on your plate. Right, so now that we have kind of like our base going on there, I'm now going to add a few extra little stories in the way of some beautiful oregano leaves. And you can see that the back of the oregano leaves, some of them are actually purple, which is beautiful. And I'm just going to pop these here and there just to add an extra layer to our story. So I'm going to add even more little bits of texture by adding some black pepper here and there. And then some of my seed parmesan, just to add even more texture. And then finally, we definitely want to go with some of this beautiful fresh basil from the garden. I try and get the tiny little baby leaves. And then finally, as always, flowers to save the day, brighten the day. So these are just the miniature orange. And there's a couple of yellow marigold petals going in here, because it wouldn't be my food if it didn't have a petal on it. There's actually nothing more to say. Pasta, there's nothing more to say. Spaghetti bolognese, homemade sauce, homemade pasta. You're winning. You are winning. In fact, because that one's so pretty, I'm not going to touch it. But this one is right here, ready for me to twirl and taste, because I actually can't wait. So good. I can't wait for you to taste it. Enjoy.